This is Dixie Creek, a little stream close to Elko, Nevada. The area has been deserted for quite some time, except for the rocky areas where hardly anything grew along the banks. But then everything changed beyond recognition, thanks to beavers. They're the architects behind this lively wetland scene right in the heart of the desert. Without them, life wouldn't have bounced back in these areas. It took 30 years for a dry stream, barely recognizable as one, to transform into an oasis in the middle of the desert. That's the remarkable change seen in the before and after photos. The after picture was taken during a long and severe drought, making the water presence in the creek nothing short of a miracle. Strangely enough, beavers played a key role in creating this miracle. Yes, it took a long time for the miracle to happen, but hey, beavers did a great job. It all began with cattle grazing. When the European settlers arrived here, they didn't realize that letting the cows graze near the creek every year wasn't a great idea. The animals devoured all the plants they could reach, and soon enough, there was almost nothing left growing there. With the lack of plants, the water in the creek dried up. This story isn't just about Dixie Creek. There are other creeks in the area that ended up with nothing more than a name. And then in the late 80s, biologists asked local farmers to change the way they let their cattle graze. The plants started making a comeback. The creek got a boost, more water flowed in, and then the first beavers showed up to do the impossible. How? Well, beavers build dams that cause water to slow down and accumulate rather than simply flowing downstream. As a result, ponds expand, the groundwater level rises, and vegetation flourishes. This transformation turns what was once a desert into a thriving paradise teeming with diverse wildlife. To dive deeper, let's understand how water acts in deserts. Desert water systems are quite unique. Rainfall is scarce compared to areas with milder climate, so most of the time the streams are dry or barely flowing. When rain does come, these streams briefly come alive only to dry out again. However, due to decades of pollution and grazing, many small waterways in American deserts have suffered severe degradation. But that's when beavers are out of the equation. Studies have shown that beaver dams can significantly improve the quality of wetlands and streams, leading to better animal life and healthier rivers. The beaver dam may not look super solid on the outside, but it's actually pretty sturdy. First, the beavers lay down a base of rocks, and then they skillfully weave together fallen trees, branches, and twigs they've gathered. Using their sharp teeth, they munch through the twig bark to get the sugary layer beneath, which not only serves as a snack, but also supplies materials for building. Pond plants and silt fortify the dams over time, making them incredibly robust. It's fascinating how a small creature armed with mud and sticks can have such a lasting impact on an entire ecosystem. Take, for instance, a discovery in 2005 where scientists stumbled upon the fossilized remains of a beaver dam estimated to be around 125,000 years old. This dam had fossilized without ever fully collapsing. But what about the ecosystem? When the dam's all set, it forms a beaver pond where plants thrive and animals make themselves at home. But as time goes on, the beaver might get a bit bored with its home, like when there aren't enough good trees left. So it packs up and leaves. Without anyone looking after it, the dam starts to crumble bit by bit. The water it was holding back seeps away, leaving behind a mix of mud, twigs, and fallen leaves. Quite fertile stuff. As the area fills up with all this plant debris and dries up, grazing animals move in. Eventually, it might transform into a lush meadow. And just so you know, the creek doesn't go anywhere. Eventually, the meadow is repopulated with riparian trees, usually aspens, willows, and other species favored by beaver. After seeing all this splendor, the beavers usually repopulate the area and the cycle begins anew. The benefits extend beyond mere landscaping. A case in point is the introduction of beavers to Utah's arid areas, where the main goal was to improve water quantity and quality. In a desert environment, numerous native and endangered animals heavily depend on water access. Moreover, with deserts inherently being too dry, global warming makes the world even drier. Just one beaver dam can make life better for lots of creatures like fish, bugs, plants, birds, and mammals living in and near the river. It's like a budget-friendly way to fix up the land, and all it takes are beavers. No need for big machines to dig and reshape things, just their teeth, paws, and tails do the trick. But beavers don't just make the land around them wetter, they also do the opposite when it comes to flooding. A beaver dam can have a freeboard above the water level. When there are heavy rains, the river or lake fills with water. The dam then gradually releases the excess water, somewhat reducing the height of the flood wave. Moreover, beaver dams smooth out water flow across a larger area, allowing it to slowly seep into the ground. The water eventually finds its way back into the stream. Rivers with beaver dams in their headwaters have lower high water and higher low water levels. This eventually helps regulate stream flow, preventing both floods and droughts. Dams are like all-in-one water control systems in the wild. There's solid scientific evidence showing that when beavers build dams, it can seriously change the landscape. Dams increase the amount of water stored on floodplains and reestablish links between floodplains and streams. You can say beaver dams are barriers in streams that slow down the flow of water. This slower flow reduces erosion and also impacts how nutrients and chemicals circulate in ponds and rivers. And with sediment being held back and building up, water quality downstream is impacted. Basically, think of beaver ponds as nature's water filters. They sift through and hold on to nutrients and pollutants, so the water that comes out of these ponds is actually cleaner than what went in. Beavers create dams that not only slow down water flow, but also make it deeper. This means there's more water and it ends up being cleaner. What else could you ask for? Well, removing nitrogen would be nice. Actually, research has shown that beaver populations are indeed capable of doing this. Farmers commonly use nitrogen fertilizers, but when these fertilizers get into nearby streams, they trigger excessive algae growth. This overgrowth of algae ends up using up all the oxygen in the water, throwing off the balance of the entire ecosystem. Beavers play a crucial role in restoring balance. As they create ponds, the water interacts more with the soil and plant material. Within these elements, certain bacteria transform nitrates into nitrogen gas, which simply evaporates. Research shows that this natural process can reduce nitrogen levels in water by up to 45%. Alright, got the floods and nitrogen part. Now let's talk about fires. Usually, more water means less chance of fire. But do beaver dams really help with that? When a beaver builds a dam, it transforms a stream into a wetland. This makes the area pretty damp, and if a fire happens, it usually follows the easiest route, burning dry plants away from the beaver ponds. In 2018, the Sharps fire scorched 100 square miles of land in Idaho. Surprisingly, a small haven of green, a beaver swamp, survived the devastation untouched by the flames. Why? Well, because water doesn't burn. Beavers make these lush green spots, offering a safe haven for creatures like fish, frogs, birds, and small mammals during wildfires. While the surroundings go up in flames, the space around the beaver ponds stays relatively untouched, a perfect hideout for animals to wait out the fire. And since we've started talking about other animals, let's explore this a bit more. Both active and deserted beaver lodges offer refuge to various creatures. These include nesting spots for waterfowl and fallen trees that attract other mammals. And let's not forget the vital role of water in arid regions, a true savior for many animals, including livestock. In areas with beaver dams, fish thrive too, and no, beavers don't eat them. In fact, there's research specifically looking into how dams affect salmon. Beaver ponds are a habitat of various kinds of insects, which serve as meals for other creatures like salmon. Plus, beavers even help keep the water temperature just right in different parts of their ponds, making it a cozy spot for every creature. It's been found that beaver dams help frog and toad populations by providing protected areas for larvae to mature in warm, oxygenated water. Beaver dams play a role in supporting a variety of songbirds, both those that migrate and those that live in the area. They create food and homes for these birds, leading to an increase in bird diversity around dams. And of course, beaver dams actually help out waterfowl like ducks, giving them the kind of wet habitats they love. Other birds find cozy spots for nests, and fallen trees turn driftwood, and the water gives them extra safety from predators. Simply put, considering all this, it's no wonder that research consistently demonstrates beaver-made ponds as far richer in biodiversity compared to others. Beavers essentially remodel their habitat by felling trees, creating diverse spaces that attract a plethora of species from big to small, including mammals, amphibians, waterfowl, insects, and various plants. And guess what? Beavers do all this work for free. It might sound weird if animals used money, right? But people shell out a bunch of cash to help out nature, cleaning up water, stopping floods, and all that stuff. And when you think about it, nature isn't just for the wild creatures. It's pretty important for us humans to survive on this planet. So in a way, we owe a big thanks to those beavers. It was estimated that beavers contribute around $632 million worth of essential work annually, and they don't even ask for a thank you or for an apology for being almost exterminated once. Beavers used to roam all over the globe, from Scotland to Spain, Syria to Russia, and Canada to Mexico, but the fur trade in the 1500s to 1800s nearly wiped them out. Thanks to recent research and conservation efforts, their numbers are bouncing back. Still, there are only about 10 million beavers worldwide, a far cry from the 100 million that once called North America home. From the early 1800s to the late 1900s, around 100 square miles of American wetlands vanished. Much of this disappearing habitat went hand in hand with a decline in the beaver population. People literally made hats out of beavers and ended up with a dry spell as a result. Many researchers suggest that the idea of the southwestern United States being dominated by hot sands, rocks, and a scarcity of plants largely originates from the disappearance of beavers in the area. Back in the 1820s, this region boasted a much lusher landscape, described as filled with ponds and swamps in New Mexico. Take a look at the state now. Naturally, when beavers were wiped out, it posed a problem for all the creatures that depended on them. Take the salmon in California's Scott River, for instance. In the past, these fish sought shelter in ponds and canals crafted by beavers. After the beavers vanished, the old dams crumbled and the wetlands dried up. To add to the trouble, gold mining came along and destroyed what was left. Now Scott resembles a post-industrial sacrifice zone, with the once lush river floodplain buried under heaps of waste. Salmon are nowhere to be found, and this story repeats across many rivers. The good news is that it seems like people are coming to their senses. Now, as they watch the arid lands, they're taking steps to reintroduce beavers there, and this effort spans multiple states. The focus is on bringing back beavers to the dry regions of Utah and Nevada, as you saw in the beginning of the video. Also, there are plans to relocate beavers to Northern California, where they're reportedly in high demand. However, not everyone is thrilled about having beavers in their neighborhood. We'll delve into the reasons for this sentiment shortly. But partly due to these people, the practice of relocating beavers is gaining traction. This relocation practice aims to prevent the creatures from being hunted. Instead, they're moved from places where beavers might cause trouble to areas where their dam building skills can be put to good use in fixing, well, just about anything. You've probably figured out by now that dams can be damn useful. It all began in Nevada, but similar initiatives have sprouted up in other parts of the western United States. For instance, in Washington state, Forest Service workers use beavers to increase water resources for coho and Chinook salmon. Meanwhile, in Colorado, beavers that cause a bit of a nuisance in populated areas are relocated to spots where their environmental contributions make more sense. Back in the 1940s, the State Department of Fish and Game in Idaho even kicked off an unusual campaign to parachute beavers in crates into the backcountry. In the late 1940s, if you gazed up at the sky in the right part of Idaho, you might have witnessed a beaver taking a parachute plunge. At that time, an employee from the department, sensing a rising tension between people and beavers, proposed using planes and parachutes to relocate these creatures. He pointed out that previous methods of moving beavers were costly, and the beavers often didn't make it through. So they decided to box them up, strap on parachutes, and drop them into the desired location. Plus, there was an abundance of unused parachutes left over from the Second World War. After running the tests, they loaded 76 beavers onto the plane and flew them out. Surprisingly, only one beaver didn't make it because it hopped off the box during the landing from a 75-foot height. Not a smart move. Surprisingly, using parachutes turned out to be the most cost-effective method, coming in at around $16 per beaver. Chances are the expenses have gone up significantly by now. That's why we need to explore alternative approaches, especially since more states are eager to restore their beaver populations. Take Arizona, for instance. It's facing the same issues as Nevada: soil erosion, rivers running dry, and a shortage of vegetation. In a nutshell, beavers are in high demand. The concept of transporting beavers to the desert has raised concerns. There are several challenges, with the most obvious one being water. Don't forget about the intense heat. During Nevada's summer, the air temperature can go above 100 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks or even months. In these desert environments, beavers typically stay in their burrows during the day and come out at night. In 2019 and 2020, Nevada welcomed 47 beavers as part of a resettlement initiative, joining 9 existing beavers in the region. However, some of the beavers faced challenges adjusting to the local heat, felt stress from the move, and 4 fell prey to natural predators like lynxes, bears, and jackals. Also, a number of beavers chose to leave the resettlement area. Not all of them stayed to build dams. Perhaps they saw how much work, unpaid mind you, there is to be done here and chose to move somewhere else. Moving to a new spot can really get on anyone's nerves, and for beavers, it's no different. These creatures are quite timid, and the wild can be harsh. To predators, beavers are like a walking treat that can't even make a quick getaway on solid ground. At this point, you might think the idea of relocating beavers to the desert is a bit harsh. However, there are two reasons supporting this move. First, these beavers come from a university center that deals with catching animals that cause nuisance. The alternative for them is either the desert or euthanasia. And second, they're only sent to places where their species has lived before, not just any random spot in the Sahara. It's a bit reassuring. The beavers probably don't realize they're being taken back to their home turf, or else they might have chosen to stay put where they were dropped off. Whether they do or not seems to depend on the animal's personality. To figure this out, scientists sometimes run bravery tests, where they observe how aggressive the beavers are and introduce a new object to see how quickly the beaver approaches and investigates it. If beavers like living near dams, why not help them out by making dams ourselves? Humans are pretty smart, and we can totally build a dam for them. This could be a good idea, especially in places with less water where beavers might not bother building anything and just live in burrows. This somewhat ruins the whole bring in the beaver to avoid the drought plan, so people decided to build a kind of test dam for the animals. When the beavers show up, they think, hey, this is a good spot, let me add another level. They end up expanding the dams made by people, and things follow the same old routine. However, there are people who've taken it a step further. They chose to build dams all by themselves without relying on beavers for assistance. After all, humans are considered the most intelligent and resourceful beings on Earth. Can we not use our knowledge and tools to create a dam ourselves? Yes, we can. However, just one dam comes with a hefty price tag of $50,000. With that amount, you could easily build a house. So the scientists took matters into their own hands and started building dams without hiring contractors. They tried out different sizes and functionalities, and interestingly, wherever they built these structures, beavers eventually showed up and finished the job. It seems like the beavers figured out humans needed help. By the way, why not take a look inside? The dam itself isn't where beavers live, but it's like a condition to create a new home. The dam slows down water flow, creating a pond where beavers build lodges. These lodges are both their homes and safe spots from predators and rough weather. Beavers can enter the lodge through water or land, and they always have a back door, just in case a smart predator tries to sneak in. Inside the lodge, there's a practical area for drying and eating and a raised sleeping space that's layered with crushed wood and grass. The cement-like mud walls and the insulation from the cold snow outside keep the lodges cozy. So cozy that American river otters use abandoned beaver dwellings for childbirth or to hide from the weather. Also, otters have been known to bunk with beavers in lodges. It's like they figured out a way to be roommates without any major issues. Otters score a good place to stay, and beavers, well, don't seem bothered. They don't argue about meals, and although otters might try hunting a beaver every now and then, that doesn't happen too often. Beavers may be cute and good for the environment, but most people find them troublesome. It's true that beavers can cause issues when they end up in places they shouldn't be. When these animals set out to build dams, they can make a mess and destroy property. They obstruct culverts, flood roads, and disrupt irrigation systems, leading to flooding in fields and infrastructure. Beavers have become quite unpopular among farmers to the extent that there's an entire YouTube community dedicated to filming the destruction of their dams. And they do have a reason to be upset. Beavers do cause problems. In the Riding Mountain National Park area, locals are constantly complaining about beavers, labeling them as troublesome rodents. Even if you blow up their dam, it won't solve the issue. They'll just rebuild it. The flooded pastures from beaver dams have driven many cattle farmers away from their lands in the last 15 years. Those who stuck around had to cut down on their livestock. Numerous meadows that used to be cow grazing spots are now off limits due to floods blamed on beavers. Beavers are often blamed for causing river flooding and erosion of railways and highways. They can be a problem when it comes to moving cattle. Just picture trying to carry a bunch of calves across a beaver pond. It's anything but easy. Municipalities spend a lot of money trying to shoot beavers and destroy dams, but it doesn't help. The problem is serious enough that people have created devices to outsmart beavers, like using pipes that run through their dams. This helps control water levels, preventing flooding on roads and trails, all while keeping the beaver-built ecosystem intact. And there's no need to resettle anyone. You won't even need parachutes. Beavers don't just impact farmers, there's more to the story. Back in 2012, a beaver dam collapsed near Duval, Washington, causing a rush of water, mud, and debris through the streets. Locals compared it to a raging river, and some homes and property suffered damage. Many locals had no flood insurance since they lived away from flood-prone areas. Maybe they should think about getting beaver insurance. See you later.